Lunch break of day 18 of the Undercover Police Inquiry, Tranche 3, Phase 1. We've been listening to the live evidence of Karen Doyle, who was an activist with Movement for Justice. I'm joined by Zoe Young from Campaign Opposing Police Surveillance.
Hello.
Zoe, what do you make of what we've heard?
Well, she's spoken really well. And I mean, the questioning has been quite challenging. I could imagine in her position, I would have struggled with a lot of it.
Sure, yeah.
And I was involved in a lot of those protests. I used to pick up the leaflets that
just on that thing of you were saying about a lot of the questioning was very challenging.
Yeah.
Once again, we had the Undercover Police Inquiry really focusing on the idea that that somehow these protests by Movement for Justice were disorderly, that they were violent. The only thing they had this to base that on was the language used in the reports by HN81, the undercover police officer who used the cover name Dave Hagan. There's no contemporaneous reports being used whatsoever in the questioning to talk about actually what happened on any of these demonstrations.
Yeah.
It is incredibly repetitive.
It is quite repetitive, but I suppose I'm trying to look at the positive of that by repeatedly saying, well, were you racist? Were you causing violence? Were you the problem? They're giving her space to say, no, we were anti-racist. No, we were not. We were trying to oppose violence against random black kids on the street by the police, etc. And so you've got this repetitive pushback of that. That's taking the positive angle on it.
Yeah. I mean, it's we had a lot of stuff about the anti-CS spray campaign, which, I mean, from what it appears, is largely just going along to police consultancy meetings, where they were bringing along experts, doctors, showing sections of documentaries that have been shown on Channel 4. If you were to read the reports by Dave Hagan, it suggests that these were public order situations which were very confrontational and like somehow something to be really concerned about, rather than an exercise in local democracy.
Well, exactly. I mean, some of the language that people were being described as a thorn in the side of a senior police officer, and as Karen Doyle was pointing out, it's like, no, we were trying to hold them to account, and that was perceived as being a thorn in the side. So then you have a situation where you have a protest saying, we don't want kids to be harassed by the police, and that is perceived as creating a public order incident, and then the police would be there en masse. And I mean, just listening to it, I remember it, and I'm kind of shaking even as I'm speaking, just recalling, you're there just trying to speak out for some kid who's been traumatized, and suddenly you're all traumatized for it. Like the police would just suddenly come after you. And then you see this imagery of this woman. One of the few photos that they used this morning, they show this guy who goes by Dave Hagan.
Yeah. So I mean, just coming on to that, so this was about the Bermondsey for Whites campaign by the National Front. There was a number of demonstrations which the National Front held in Bermondsey to further their racist agenda. Movement for Justice went down, certainly for at least one of those marches. I think more than one, but there was one that we were looking at. This was the same incident that was examined in the questioning of Alex Wande last week, where essentially Dave Hagan is in his report claims that the group was up for it. They were looking to have a confrontation with the police, with the fascists. As Karen pointed out, and as we saw in the photographs, the only person who was up for it, who was looking to have a confrontation, was Dave Hagan himself.
Yeah, it's just so telling, and there's this picture of her holding his arm and a police officer's sort of arm on him as well, and it was clear he was there creating a drama that wasn't going to have been happening if he hadn't have been. And just time and again, that seems to be the way that the reporting represents the whole situation as some sort of public order created by the protest. Same agenda as we would see at the time, week after week, in the Daily Mail or the Times. They'd always manage, somehow you'd have some peaceful protest, you'd have a load of people, police would turn up, tooled up, riot vans. Oh God, here we go. Have they got the dogs? Have they got the horses? Which way are we going to run? You immediately start looking out for where you're going to be able to hide behind, where you're going to get around a corner into an alleyway and feel safe in that situation. And again, it now turns out it was these undercover cops who were provoking this stuff.
We only saw one example of any actual public disorder in any of the demonstrations. Even that event in Bermondsey didn't result in actually any public disorder. Dave Hagan was calmed down by the group he was infiltrating and was unsuccessful in creating any sort of flashpoint. The only example we were really shown was of May Day 1999. This was in the immediate aftermath of the fascist nail bombs, Dave Copeland, one of which had taken place in Compton Street in Soho. The Admiral Nelson, was it called?
Admiral something,
yeah,
but the big major gay pub on Old Compton Street where everyone would be pouring out, and it was just fantastic, the glory and art of Soho.
So the
blown up, blows to pieces. These fuckers were actually blowing people up. If the Spy got should have been looking at anything, it should have been these guys who were blowing people up.
Yeah, so the Movement of Justice organised a feeder march into the May Day march from Brixton, going into to Trafalgar Square, and then because of the nail bombing, they went into Soho, and were expecting to meet with another feeder march, which has come from East London. And the police said, "Oh no, they're not coming. We need you to go back to Trafalgar Square." So they did return to Trafalgar Square. Then they saw the march coming, the other feeder march coming, so they went to go back. And there was a very minor, very brief moment where the police tried to move them on, and as Karen says, they refused to move. And this appears to be the totality of the public order incidents that were reported on in the whole deployment of Dave Hagan against Movement for Justice. I think that says a lot. There's also the incident outside the Stephen Lawrence inquiry, but that wasn't really Movement for Justice thing, and again, it's very minor. And so, when we talk about the when the police have this justification for their deployment, and it's often, about 50% of that is supposedly about public order, there's really no real evidence of them actually doing that job. As Karen pointed out, there was no intention of going along that day with any plan of causing any public disorder. It was purely the police actions on the day that led to the disorder, which was always the case. She talked a lot about the fact that Movement for Justice had regular demonstrations in Brixton, which had no police presence, that resulted in no disorder whatsoever. In fact, the vast majority of events had no disorder whatsoever. If there was ever any danger, it was always the police that were causing it.
Exactly. And she was talking about the stand that they used to have outside Brixton Station. I remember that so clearly. It was like a real kind of hub. Everyone would be coming in and out of the tube and what's the latest info, and oh god, the latest news about some kid who's been given some trouble. And that's literally how you'd find out about the protests. And as just a humanitarian young person, I would be like, right, am I free that day? Right, tell me, mates, let's go along. And then the questioning today has all been about, well, were you only giving out these leaflets to people of one particular color or something? It's like, that would be kind of weird. And then they're asking the same question about, they would call a public meeting about the latest things that have been happening. And it's like, would you only be inviting people of a certain colour? Would you only be giving information to people of a certain colour? It's like, what part of this is not an anti-racist move? This is an anti-racist movement. That means involving everybody equally. Are you not getting? And I just keep having to remind myself, the value of this questioning is that it gives Karen Doyle this space to make that clear in front of a judge who has no experience of this, has no diversity panel like the judge in the Macpherson inquiry had, and so just doesn't understand this. And you just have to bring it absolutely explicitly to him again and again and again, and that is what this questioning is allowing. That
is very true. It is doing that. Karen's been very, very good at doing that, I think. She mentioned, so one of the things is that it was put to her that they only supported people from ethnic minorities who were killed by police. She pointed out the Harry Stanley and Dermot O'Neill, both. Harry Stanley was a Scottish guy who was deaf in one ear, who was carrying a chair leg back from a pub, was shot in the back by armed police. Dermot O'Neill was also killed by police. These were campaigns that they Movement for Justice campaigned on. She said it was nothing to do with the colour of the skin of the person who had been receiving the end of police brutality, but the police brutality itself, which was the issue.
And the Harry Stanley thing, because I really, really remember that. And because I was quite naive. I was, a posh West London girl. I didn't really get a lot of this. I was learning by going along to this. And the Harry Stanley campaign, I was like, oh, great. Okay, there's this white guy. What's the story there? So I paid a lot of attention to it. And then I remember that he'd met his brother-in-law and somebody had broken a chair and they were trying to get this chair mended. And that's why he had this chair leg in a plastic bag and happened to be wandering back from the pub with it. And then, he was Scottish. So some idiot, somebody who'd fallen for a lot of the anti-IRA propaganda, had just heard his accent, seen a chair leg in a plastic bag and taken it that he must be some kind of terrorist and reported it. And they literally just turned up and shot this guy in the back on his way home to his family after a drink with his brother-in-law.
Yeah, incredibly grim. And one of we heard about other sort of cases of that. There was the school with the three school kids who who well, basically, someone had come into a school, had attacked a black school child. 3 of the school children had identified the attacker, and when they identified the attacker to the police had arrested them. And we had the whole sort of thing of the reports kind of claiming that it was the aggressive parents, the agitating parents.
What line was that? The agitating families, the agitating parents.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Karen Doyle did a really good job of pointing out how this was all through this prism of SDS racism that was just dripping with prejudice. That the idea that somehow that like concerned parents whose children were facing life-changing charges for really ridiculous set up things. Being concerned about that was somehow them being violent, being confrontational. Like it all feeds back. So many of these reports talk about like, it'll be a confrontational in court. It'll be, they're setting up to have like disorder at the meeting. I mean, there's so much about the language that was being used that really kind of made out these things to be something they really weren't.
And at no point did they seem to consider the option that if they didn't want people to be unhappy with the police, why didn't they just try not being racist?
Quite.
This whole stop and search campaign that they had, and you just looked at the figures year after year, and you just see, how many more black kids, Asian kids were getting this than the white kids. And I mean, at the time, there were so many artists who were speaking to this. People like Lyndon Kwesi Johnson was huge education for me as a West London kid. You'd hear this music and you'd hear these stories about, someone just being at a bus stop and just suddenly turning, Sonny's Letter. This music was so powerful, so important to educate people, and it was really widespread. We understood it. Why the hell did the police not understand it?
I mean, I think that the point is that they weren't interested. What they were interested in was suppressing the rights of black people and ethnic minorities in general. Is there anything else you want to add about what we've heard so far this morning?
Well, there was something interesting emerging. Advisory Service for Squatters is here following and has been tweeting about that in Hagen, it's not even his real name, is it? That's his cover name. We don't know his real name. Yeah. I mean, Karen Doyle's been saying it Hagen, so it could be an Irish. Anyway, in some of his reporting, that there was a document suggesting that he'd wanted to join Reclaim the Streets as an undercover, but it was full.
That's really strange. I mean,
so they all wanted to go and have fun with the party people having the Reclaim the Streets parties. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's full in the sense that it was already well covered by undercover officers, not that the group itself was full.
Which was definitely not full, because it was growing and bubbling all over the place, and it went wherever people brought the energy to. And so that's an interesting little thing to learn, to look into about how the Spike Ops unit was deciding who was going where.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Dave Hagen, it was kind of different to a lot of the undercover officers. Rather than having a target group, he had a target area. He was tasked with a roving remit of public order in the Brixton area. Essentially, he was an undercover officer infiltrating Brixton as a place.
Yeah, Brixton.
What? There
was a lot going on in Brixton. I mean, very Brixton. Diverse, complicated things going on. There used to be this pink tank parked up on Clapham Road, wasn't it? Anyway, just thinking of it with your T-shirt.
Yeah, those watching on TikTok might think this is red. I don't know why TikTok has done this. So we'll be hearing more from Karen Doyle this afternoon. Thanks everybody for joining. Hopefully the sound sounds better. I had a few people saying that I needed to got a microphone after the last break. I've got these are the newer microphones, which I recently bought. I think I've set them up properly this time. Apologies if last time the audio wasn't particularly good. Hopefully it should be better now. If you could let me know if there's anything that needs changing, that would be really helpful. I've just noticed that some people have commented, because I'm using StreamYard now. They're just saying hello back.
I would say listen in this afternoon. Listen in to Karen, because she's given a masterclass in responding to these questions, as all of the witnesses have. I'm just so impressed. As someone who's going to be on in a year or two, I don't know what, I just find it so valuable to be able to be here, or if I'm not able to be here, to listen in on the YouTube or wherever, and just see how people are dealing with the questions, thinking about how to be writing your statement, how to be preparing for being questioned in these ways. I think it's really
and it will be live again this afternoon with the usual 10-minute delay. I think Karen is doing an excellent job. Really recommend you tune in if you can. If not, or if you are, we'll during the afternoon break, I'll do another one of these videos, and at the end of the day, And this evening I'll be doing a Twitter Spaces. I am really behind on the videos. I meant to catch up with the videos over the weekend, the like little scripted straight to camera videos I've been doing. I haven't done that. It's just
even Tom needs a break sometimes.
Right, yeah. I had a great time at the Huntstad benefit gig and the Refugee Community Kitchen 10-year party though over the weekend. So swings and roundabouts.
Good.
All right, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again this afternoon.
And donate to Tom's thing.
Oh yeah, if you want to support me, I can go to ko-fi.com/Tom B. Fowler. All contributions greatly received and will be spent on making this better, hopefully.
And it's getting better all the time. Well done.
Thanks. Cheers. Bye for now.